Welcome. Rebecca Swanson is my name. Welcome to our Q&A panel discussion. And by way of introduction, so as I said, I'm Rebecca Swanson. I'm a business strategist, but I very much focus on personal mastery and well-being, very much about people and culture in the work that I do. And we're also going to be joined by Trevor. Welcome, Trevor.
Thanks.
Trevor is the owner of Development Pathways, a small business consultancy specialist based in Hurstville. After 3 years in the recruitment and HR industry, Trevor started Development Pathways in early 2020, where his passion for assisting small business owners is now his business. It's great to have you, Trevor. Now, we also have Chris joining us. So Chris Rancini, she has a successful history in business startups with a strong business acumen. Her strength is in systems and procedures and the establishment of strong teams in order to ensure businesses work strong without her and, more importantly, make a profit. She is a business owner that runs multiple businesses, including ABS, the Alphabet Academy, and more. Hi, Chris. Welcome. So Shane McNulty is an experienced CEO, executive coach, management consultant, facilitator and trainer with both local and international operating experience. He created 3 successful startups as well as managed publicly listed companies. He's demonstrated ability in developing strategy and delivering improved sales and financial results. So hopefully we will have Shane with us. So I'm going to get straight into this. We have a number of questions that I would really like to talk to you guys about. So Trevor, let's start with you. I do actually want to ask everybody this question, but the first question that I'm really interested to hear your opinion on is just how bad is it right now for businesses to find staff? Trevor?
Yeah, and look, fortunately, Paul covered a bit of this in his presentation we've just seen. Yeah, it's tough. It's not impossible. And I was really heartened by Paul's response to that question at the end there about businesses needing to think a bit outside the square. But it's particularly difficult, Rebecca, in industries that we see a lot of. Like we all go to a cafe occasionally, if not every day or more than once a day in some cases, and you notice it that the staff are under the pump because they're short-staffed. If you call for a tradesperson and you're told it's going to take a week, I've got tradespeople in my networking groups who are saying, don't refer any work to me until after Christmas, please. I can't do it for you. So it's particularly noticeable in those sorts of service industries that we're noticing at the moment, but it goes a lot deeper. Try and get an engineer for any role at the moment. It's just not there. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is very.
But not impossible. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, good to know. Chris, what about you? How bad, from your perspective, do you see that this labour shortage is? I know that Eob was talking previously about the fact that you are in the industry that has more of that trade kind of labour. So what's your experience been?
Yeah, it is very, very difficult to get staff at the moment. Very hard to hire new recruits. And it's just making sure that your business model allows for flexibility to make sure that you can take those jobs on, like what Trevor was talking about. But it's very, very hard.
Yeah. No, that's look, no no issues here on my end. I'm experiencing major challenges in the talent market myself. With active, I mean, the amount of time invested in talent acquisition and recruitment at the moment is just far exceeds anything else. So my apologies. Shane has sent his apologies. Shane is not joining us, but instead we are joined by Dr. George Morano. So George, let me ask you as well, what is your perspective on how bad the current shortages are in labour at the moment?
I think from our client's perspective, across the board, everybody's really in a bit of a pickle with regards to the shortages. I mean, the interest rate, the unemployment rate is under 4%, 3.9 or 3.8. However, that also, that actually goes across the board for everybody. So, organisations who can really grapple with how to overcome these shortages are going to put themselves in a competitive advantage. And I've been and I've been discussing with some of my clients with regards to what can be automated and what can be outsourced in these kinds of times. So it's really important to kind of really take a look back at look into your business and talk about, what can be automated, what can be outsourced. And we have Sanel in the audience here who kind of runs a managed a services business out of South Africa. So we look at some of our clients. I've been getting them to do a task analysis of their role and seeing what is value added from their list of tasks and what isn't, and seeing how we can outsource those as well. Another factor also is that the embracing, and as Dr. Nikolic was saying, embracing digital transformation and using software to really automate a lot of those human-centric processes that are very repetitive within your organisation too. We don't, change doesn't usually come proactively. It takes moments like this where we do have skill shortages that kind of people get off their bums and start looking at these kinds of initiatives. But it's not isolated to a few cases. It's this unemployment issue. It's across the board. However, whenever we've got a crisis, there's also an opportunity somewhere there, and it's those organisations that can kind of take on the challenge and create an opportunity out of it, is where they can get market share and also competitive advantage against their rivals.
Yeah, very true. Thanks, George. So, Trevor, what can small businesses do that they may not have tried in the past to find those much needed employees? I know a lot's been spoken about here and there, but from your perspective, what are your key elements that you suggest?
Look, remembering that I work with the very small end of the small business spectrum, so a sole trader who's ready to take on the first employee. Really, George, I don't know if you saw my little thumbs up on the screen, but exactly what you said about doing an analysis of the role itself before you start putting job ads out, things like that, what can be outsourced, etc. But look, and Paul, again, in his presentation touched on this as well, as it's not going to be about money, because someone will just offer them more money down the road. The competitor, the next door coffee shop, the next door accounting firm. So just try thinking outside the square. You'll be amazed if you've got a small team, how much they like being a team. Get them involved in a small local charity to help fundraise an event or something as the business, along the way. Just think of some different things that you can be doing. A quick anecdote, though, about the way you go about it. A local cafe near us had a sign for 2 weeks in the window, barista wanted. Couldn't get a barista. Couldn't get one. And I said to them, look, just trust me for a day, change the sign. And the sign they changed it over said, we're looking to add to our team, please come and have a chat to us. And they had 5 people come in. 3 of them were worthy of interviews. 2 of them got the job. And then they got their coffee supplier to come out, and rather than just a quick 1 hour, this is how you use the machine, he spent half a day there training those 2 new people on how to work the coffee machine and be half reasonable baristas, all because they changed what the sign said in the window. So yeah, what do they say? Stupid is doing the same thing over again, expecting something different. You've got to start thinking a bit differently, guys, and a bit outside the square.
Yes, I think you'll find that's the definition of insanity, funnily enough.
That's it, insanity, that's it. And stupidity probably matches.
Stupidity, yes. Thanks, Trevor. So, Chris, what kind of things have you been having to do differently in this current market in your businesses that you are thinking, might have been good decisions, or maybe, you tried and they're just not worth trying again?
In relation to the childcare space, I suppose the best thing that we've done is really focused on retention and how we can retain our staff. So that's been brilliant for that. Our hiring method has always been to target your mums, that and you're able to give them that flexibility. So that works in the childcare space. For the trade-based businesses, we have tried everything, you name it. And it's really understanding. So where we get traction is when we have an employee coming into our boardroom, it's really understanding what is it that they want and making sure we can deliver on that. So, for example, if they live in Liverpool and they only want to work in Liverpool, I'm not going to put them at Bringelly. So it's really finding out what the employee really wants, what is important for them, and making sure that we don't move goalposts.
I think,
so
I think you made a really good point there in that, everybody is different, and really understanding what's going to motivate one potential candidate or employee over another, and making sure you're flexible and really focusing on that is so important. I know I've had that experience myself, and also that industries are so different. I had a tradie guy who owns a trade business, and he was telling me that he's having so many troubles recently, just in the last 6 to 12 months, in keeping labourers, that he's having to pay double, which is killing his business. And then we had a bit of a chat about, the apprenticeship schemes that the government are really supportive in, maybe long-term bringing in apprentices and really helping them understand a trade and invest as well was a really great idea. Who are you?
In that apprenticeship space, it's great.
Yeah. Have you utilised that, and what's your experience been?
Look, I actually have 8 apprentices on the book, so it's something that we definitely think, well, if we can't get a workforce, let's create it. So it's making sure that we utilise that. What we also do, which I've spoken to EOB about, we were recently invited to be a part of the Job Summit and to be an advisor on the Job Summit. There were 3 things that they sort of narrowed down on. One was getting skilled migration, which we do. One was reactivating, your working mums, which works very limited in that trade base. And there was the mums, the trade-based, the apprentices, and getting elderly. I'm going to get stuck here. Getting mature workers to re-engage in the workforce. What that looked like for ACS is we have gotten fitters and electricians who are retired. We have invited them to become part of our mentor program to knowledge transfer. So that's something that we're super proud of, in getting those more experienced workers back into the workforce to be able to train and knowledge share to the young pups that we've got on staff too.
Yeah, what a great idea. And they would probably love doing that, coming back and mentoring too at their stage.
Yeah, they just love a coffee. They just love a coffee.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Chris, you did mention that working really hard at retaining your staff was one of your strategies. So in terms of retaining your staff, I think maybe let's go to George for this one. But really, what is the role of a leader in setting that business culture of happiness, where people are brand ambassadors and they really want to stay engaged and with an organisation long term? Like, what is the role of the leader in creating that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Rebecca. And, because, remuneration has a diminishing return at a certain point. However, we need to also be a little bit more microscopic in our human capital, right? And look at our staff, as Chris was saying. Where are people in their life cycle, in their employment life cycle? And, and we can't take it kind of a round peg and try and put it into any kind of hole, right? So what we want to do is we want to kind of really dissect those segments within our human capital and see what their motivations are, right? And really fulfill those. However, at that leadership level, it's really, really important. And, and as Dr. Brad Nikolic was saying before, there requires a degree of authenticity, right? Where, certain people in the organisation, from a leadership perspective, the relationship would be very much horizontal. as opposed to those who are coming out of, especially graduates and interns and so forth. They're very, very much vertical. However, the approach that you take to those different stratas within your organisation need to be very bespoke. So it requires a bit of creativity from a leadership perspective, but also it requires you to kind of have that insight into what are the motivations across the board. I mean, because they're pretty much different, right? And industry also plays a significant role as well. I'm very fortunate in the sense that in my team, I'm actually the youngest, so the way my management style is very much managing up, right? However, it does require that a very ambidextrous approach to kind of managing your staff.
Yeah, I agree. So, Chris, in terms of being a leader in your businesses, how do you contribute towards that culture and leading that culture and that employee advocacy, I guess, and engagement?
Yep. One of the big things that I say is your vibe is your tribe, and they will feed off your energy. So it's really, really important to know that when you're in that leadership space, that your vibe is on point. There's a difference, and they've like a lot of the speakers have touched on it today, between leadership and management. So it's really understanding sort of where you fit and understanding, is this an opportunity where I can foster a leadership role, or is this requiring management? And it's really understanding at the point that you're in which hat you have to play. I'm a little bit fortunate in that I'm quite removed from the day-to-day runnings. So I've got managers that play that part, whereas because I'm removed, I can move into that leadership space. The biggest thing is just knowing and being conscious and present, and being aware of what you say, what you think, and the vibe that you are portraying, because it will filter. So it needs to be on point.
Yeah, wonderful. I really love that. It really does sort of start from the top down, and you do have to be very consciously aware, even though you're going through so many challenges as a business owner. Be very aware of how you are turning up and how you're presenting yourself to your team, because, it definitely has a flow-on effect. So, Trevor, let's go to you. When we're talking about creating a really great culture, but also trying to attract staff as well, what do you think is making one business more attractive than their competitors? And it may not be just culture. Like, what are some of the other things that you think are also quite distinctive in people maybe considering going with one business or another for a particular role?
I think something that often gets overlooked, Rebecca, is that when someone comes into your business as a candidate for a role, if they're smart, they're going to be interviewing you as much as you're going to be interviewing them. So the impression that you give, if your business says, branding says, we're trendy, we're this super duper place where every Gen X and Y person wants to work, and when they get there and they meet you, and you're not like that brand at all, they're not going to want to come and work with you. They're going to go down the road to the other business that's is living that brand. So remember that always expect that candidate is going to be interviewing you. They might not say it out loud, but that's what's going on in their head if they're smart. Is they're going to be interviewing you at the same time. So make sure that you, the person, reflect that brand. Same again, and I come back to the micro business spectrum. All too often you see the person who delivers your food to your table drop it in front of you because they're a bit stressed and busy, and you find out later they're the owner of the business. And you think, what? Really? Who would want to contemplate working for you if that's the attitude you have with customers? So it's hard work. It's not easy at all, but
totally. Yeah. And, it is. It's a completely different mindset shift from the traditional ways, even just a short year or two ago, of, you're going for a job. Oh, my gosh, am I going to get it? I'm being interviewed. Whereas it really has, if not balanced out, completely overturned that, candidates are interviewing you as an organisation, saying, do I want to be here? and they're not staying as long as well. You know, they're moving on, they're getting more experiences. So they're getting very experienced at interviewing organizations and knowing what they want as well.
Yep.
When it comes to searching for the next path in their job or their career or what they're wanting to do. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. So I guess investing your time in really creating a good culture and attracting the right people and securing the right people and retaining them seems to very much be the recommendations. But, you know, how much time should you be focusing into this area of your business when you have so much else to be, you know, focusing on and dealing with in terms of business? And what's the benefit then of that in terms of the more larger scale of the business? So, Chris, maybe we might go back to you. How much time are you investing in things like culture and, you know, how you're presenting your organization to talent and to try and win that new talent? And how do you find that balance of focusing that time into those areas and the rest of the business?
I think it's like with anything, you need to know your limitations. So if it's something where you need help with advertising, interviewing, onboarding, and you know that that's just not a skill that you have, I think it's really, really important that you put your hand up and say, you know what, I'm going to get an HR consultant, or I'm going to work with someone who's in that space. I think culture will develop over time. It's not something that you can just say, okay, well, my culture is going to be family friendly starting today. It's something that will develop, and it's something that actions will speak louder than words. So I think that that's something that you really have to be mindful in relation to how much time you spend. I suppose it depends on where your business is at and what your business needs. So, you know, sitting down with your business advisors or your business coaches and having a plan on, okay, well, I would like to put on my first employee, working backwards. What does that look like? How do I do a job description? And starting at your basics, but having a plan rather than saying, oh, I need to hire someone tomorrow. So it's really sort of forecasting it and thinking forward. George, you've unmuted. What do you want to say? Come on, George.
I want to take a step back, and we need to ask ourselves, what kind of culture do we want for our organisation, right? And, you know, and because it's your behaviour and your mimicry that everybody is going to adopt, right?
Absolutely.
So you kind of need to be really, really clear and on point about what is the culture that you want. You know, if you're a manufacturing business, then you know, is your culture around OH&S, right? If it's a professional services, is it very client centric? You know, if it is the coffee shop, is it customer service? Is it this? Is it that? Right? So I mean, you know, the word culture is kind of thrown around a lot. However, you know, you really have to be very definitive on what it is and what it is that you're actually trying to achieve when we talk about culture, right? And what are the outcomes?
I would say,
yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head when you talk about outcomes. For us, our culture is, I suppose, lived through our values that we've put down.
Yeah.
So the culture is the end result. And then you've got your mission and vision statement. You've got your values. You've got all of those things that sort of work towards your culture. Culture's not just a big statement. It's those little things that work towards a culture. Absolutely agree with what you're saying, 100%. But it's just working backwards and saying, okay, well, does my mission align? Does my values align? Do I have guidelines? Do I have policies in place? Does everything align towards what I'm trying to achieve? So I agree with you 100%. And it's this, you know, word that's thrown around, but it's stripping it right back and saying, okay, every decision that I make is going to be in line with that. And I think culture, like for me, and for my businesses, culture's a feeling. It's a feeling where you walk through the door. It's a feeling, it's an energy when you're talking to the trades, when you're talking to the girls at the childcare. It's an energy around it as well. So, yeah, that's just in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree, Chris. I find that there's also something else I think for business owners to consider. So, we've talked about defining what your culture is through things like what are your values and what is it all around, and making sure that you are living and breathing your values on a day-to-day basis so that you're really creating the expectation and the vibe. But the other question is, and I see this a lot in businesses because everybody's so busy, is they forget that, the values are up on the wall and that's great, but they're not referring to them. They're not incorporating them into their daily operations and weekly and what have we. And so I also think it's a really great idea for business owners to say, well, how can I really continue to talk about and show and give examples and celebrate where the values are actually being displayed and being moved. And that can be through a monthly, people could nominate their team members for, displaying a particular value and going above and beyond, or, having some integrity or something like that, so that each month everyone's talking about it and you're really getting that flow through on a consistent basis, rather than it just being, the leader and the values in the mission statement that employers, I find, tend to forget about unless they're reminded in their everyday kind of practice as well. So it's there's a lot to think about, I think, in this whole topic. So would you say then, Trevor, let's maybe go to you. What do you think are the benefits of making sure you kind of put some time and energy into these things that we're talking about? What's the benefits for a business?
Just we're all saying step back for a minute. Get that cost and benefit balance right for a start, which comes back to George's original point that maybe you need to look at that role and strip things out of it. Because if you haven't got the time to put into that, or you haven't got the expertise to manage people, whatever it might be, then suddenly the cost starts to outweigh the benefit. The benefits, if they come through, are just phenomenal because it will give your business that point of difference. The world is just littered with examples of when it happens. It's just a fantastic, and it's a great place for people to work as well. They're the sort of businesses where when you've got a vacancy, people tell their friends or tell their networks. And next thing you know, you find that you've got your next staff member because it came from someone's Facebook post or someone having a chat to their friend at the sporting club or whatever it might have been, who's perfect for that job. And it just works if you get it right. But you just need to get that balance right. And if you can't do it, as we've heard, get a consultant or break the role down and outsource as much as you can. Suddenly now you only need someone 2 days a week to do something you thought was a full-time job because you've been managed to outsource, whether it's here in Australia or offshore, some of that particular role. Yeah.
And have the savings of a full-time versus
exactly right. Savings if it's gone. Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, guys, I think we are out of time, and it's been a really robust conversation. I'm hoping that everybody did get a chance to get some notes down. I haven't been watching Q&A, and we don't have time for really Q&A. But if you do have any questions, please put them into the Q&A, and I'm sure that the experts on the panel will be able to answer those questions, and we could probably get them back to you post-event if they're quite pertinent questions. So thank you, Chris, Trevor, and Dr. George. It's been a really great conversation, albeit brief, and I hope that you have had a lot of information throughout the Growth Gen series, especially through our final Q&A. So we will put you back over to Eeyore.